evening, where shadows softly play. A fairy tale wolf sheds his skin, gently drifting away, with a twinkle in his eye and a heart full of dreams. He waits for the Friday night glow, where the magic redeems. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night.
I wonder if I can get the music-only version of this and record myself singing it someday.
He picks up a book, the pages worn and wide.
Yeah, cutting out fast. Welcome everyone. It is Friday night. Do you know where your storyteller is? But yes, it is Friday night, and Friday night is the night in which we go into fairy tales. And by fairy tales, I mean more folk tales than fairy tales, because not all stories involve fairies. But they all involve folk. Because fairy tales are passed down generation to generation. Many things change during them. And often, stories get lost in translation. Believe me, I've read quite a few books, and fairy tales translate all over the place. And can actually be really disturbing at times. But hopefully we won't have too many disturbing fairy tales tonight, as opposed to my third book that I'm currently writing. That, within the first 6 stories, there's 10 human deaths, 8 animal deaths, and a lot of food eaten. Sentient food. But that's beside the point. We're here for fairy tales. So, we'll switch over to the library, which I need to really update the library scene. I want to change it more for fairy tale telling than anything else. Sorry, I'm checking over messages to see that anything exciting has happened, but it does not look like anything has. Nope. Anyway, nope. We're doing fairy tales. And this is a library. I have done minor changes in the library, besides adding the cat cam. You can't really see what I have listed as magic book because it doesn't really shine all that bright. Which I guess I could try to change. I mean, I could just completely stop it, but you wouldn't see it. Yeah, the glow's not prevalent enough on it. To do that, I would have to probably darken the bookshelves. Just darken the bookshelves a little. that just kind of looks creepy, honestly. Over the brightness. Turn down the contrast a little. Turn on the gamma. Make it a little bit darker in here. But you still can't quite see... Oh, well, I've got to turn it off. Magic book. Nope. I tried to add a glowing effect to the book. Looks more like smoke, but I don't have Photoshop on this one, so I can't do the way I usually do. But, well, can't really master everything in one go, can we? And again, the crowd control thing is in my face, which, you know... Ouch! I hit my wall. Ow. With my elbow. Well, also different library settings. Go back to updated. But anyway, we are in the Violet Fairy book. And our first story for the night is actually a Swahili tale. Because, as I said, fairy tales come from everywhere, and my collections try to reach into different countries and different cultures. And, you know, more than the Grimm brothers told fairy tales, after all. So, getting into our first story of the night. The Nunda, Eater of People. Once upon a time there lived a sultan who loved his garden dearly, and planted it with trees and flowers and fruits from all parts of the world. He went to see them 3 times every day, first at 7 o'clock, when he got up, then at 3, and lastly, 5:30. There was no plant and no vegetable which escaped his eye, but he lingered longest of all before his one date tree. Now the Sultan had 7 sons. 6 of them he was proud of, for they were strong and manly. But the youngest he disliked, for he spent all his time among the women of the house. The Sultan had talked to him and paid him no heed, and he had beaten him and paid no heed. He had tied him up, and he paid no heed, till at last his father grew tired of trying to make him change his ways, and just left him alone. Time passed, and one day the Sultan, to his great joy, saw signs of fruit on his date tree, and he told his vizier, "My date tree is bearing." And he told his officers, "My date tree is bearing." And he told the judges, "My date tree is bearing." And he told all the rich men of the town. He waited patiently for some days till the dates were nearly ripe, and then he called his 6 sons and said, "One of you must watch the date tree till the dates are ripe. For it is not watched, the slaves will steal them, and I shall not have any for another year." Welcome in, Guilty. And the eldest son answered, "I will go, father." And he went. The first thing the youth did was to summon his slaves and bid them beat drums all night under the date tree, for he feared he might fall asleep. So the slaves beat the drums, and the young man danced till 4 o'clock. And then it grew so cold that he could dance no longer, and one of the slaves said to him, "It is getting light, the tree is safe. Lie down, master, and go to sleep." Hello there. So he lay down and slept, and his slaves slept likewise. A few minutes went by, and a bird flew down from a neighboring thicket and ate all of the dates. "Hey, hi, Steph. Welcome in." No, I did not change Frosty tools to storytelling. A lot of scrolling on this page. Okay. Okay. My announcements don't want to change. That's a resign in. But welcome in all the fishies. Yeah, it's been a whole 10 minutes. But it is nice for you to come in. It's the Violet Fairy book, so it's a lot of short stories. And Yolta goes wiggling around. But yeah, interesting fairy tales. This one is actually from Swahili, so. Okay. Going back to everyone sleeping. A few minutes went by, and a bird flew down from a neighboring thicket and ate all the dates, and then the bird went as it had come. Soon after, one of the slaves woke up and looked for the dates, but there were no dates to see. Then he ran to the young man and shook him, saying, "Your father set you to watch the tree, and you have not watched, and the dates have all been eaten by a bird." The lad jumped up and ran to the tree to see for himself, but there was not a date anywhere. He cried aloud, "What am I to say to my father? Shall I tell him the dates have been stolen, or that a great rain fell, or a great storm blew? But he will send to gather them and bring them to him, and there will be none to bring. Shall I tell him that the Bedouins drove me away, and when I returned there were no dates?" And he will answer, "You had slaves. Did they not fight the Bedouins? It is the truth that will be best, and that I should tell him." Then he went straight to his father and found him sitting in the veranda with his 5 sons around him, and the lad bowed his head. "Give me the news from the garden," said the Sultan. And the youth answered, "The dates have all been eaten by some bird, and there's not one left." The Sultan was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Where were you when the bird came?" And the lad answered, "I watched the dates till the cocks were crowing and it was getting light, and then I lay down for a little when I slept. When I woke, a slave was standing over me, and he said, 'There is not one date left on the tree.' And I went to the date tree and saw it was true, and that is what I have to tell you." And the Sultan replied, A son like you is only good for eating and sleeping. I have no use for you. Go your way, and when my day tree bears again, I will send another son. Perhaps he will watch better. So he waited many months till the tree was covered with dates, and any tree had ever borne again. When they were near ripening, he sent one of his sons to the garden, saying, "My son, I am longing to taste those dates. Go and watch over them, for today's sun will bring them to perfection." And the lad answered, "My father, I am going now, and tomorrow, when the sun has passed the hour of 7, bid a slave come and gather the dates." "Good," answered the Sultan. The youth went to the tree and lay down and slept. And about midnight he arose to look at the tree, and the dates were all still there. Beautiful dates, just swinging in bunches. "Ah, father will have his feast indeed," he thought. "What a fool my brother was not to take more heed. Now he is in disgrace, and we know him no more. Well, I will watch till the bird comes. I should like to see what manner of bird it is." And he sat till the cocks crow, and it grew light, and the dates were still on the tree. "Oh, my father will see his dates, and they are all safe now," he thought to himself. "I will make myself comfortable against the tree." And he leaned against the trunk, and sleep came on him. And the bird flew down and ate all of the dates. When the sun rose, the head man came and looked for the dates, but there were no dates to be seen. And he woke the young man and said to him, "Look at the tree!" The young man looked up, and there were no dates. And his ears were stopped, and his legs trembled, and his tongue grew heavy at the thought of the Sultan. His slave became frightened to look at him, and asked, "Master, what is it?" He answered, "I have no pain anywhere, but I am ill everywhere. My whole body is well, but my whole body is sick. I fear my father, for I did not say to him, 'Tomorrow at 7 you shall taste the dates,' and he will drive me away, as he drove away my brother. I will go away myself before he sends me." Then he got up and took a road that led straight past the palace, but he had not walked many steps before he met a man carrying a large silver dish, covered with a white cloth to cover the dates. And the young man said, "The dates are not quite ripe. You should return tomorrow." And the slave went with him to the palace, where the Sultan was sitting with his 4 sons. "Good greeting, master," said the youth. And the Sultan answered, "Have you seen the man I sent?" "I have, master, but the dates are not yet ripe." But the Sultan did not believe his words, and said, "The 2nd year I have eaten no dates because of my sons. Go your ways. You are my son no longer." And the Sultan looked at the 4 sons that were left with him, and promised rich gifts to whoever of them would bring him the dates from the tree. But a year by year passed, and he never got them. One son tried to keep himself awake with playing cards. Another mounted a horse and rode around and around the tree, while the 2 others, whom their father, as the last hope, were sent together, lit bonfires. But whatever they did, the result was always the same. Towards dawn, they fell asleep, and the bird ate all the dates in the tree. The 6th year had come, and the dates on the tree were thicker than ever. And the head man went to the palace and told the Sultan that he had seen it. But the Sultan only shook his head and said sadly, "What is that to me? I have had 7 sons, yet for 5 years the bird has devoured my dates, and this year will be the same as ever." Now the youngest son, who was sitting in the kitchen, as was his custom, when he heard his father say those words, he rose up and went to his father and knelt beside him. "Father, this year you shall eat dates," he cried. "And on the tree are great 5 bunches, and each bunch I will give to a separate nation, for the nations in the town are 5. This time I will watch the date tree myself." But his father and his mother laughed heartily and thought his words were nothing but idle talk. One day, news was brought to the Sultan that the dates were finally ripe, and he ordered one of his men to go and watch the tree. The son, who happened to be standing by, heard the order, and he said, "How is it that you have bidden a man to watch the tree when I, your son, am left?" And his father answered, 6 were of no use, and they all failed. Who is to say you would succeed?" But the boy replied, "Have patience today, and let me go. Tomorrow you shall see whether or not I bring you dates." And the Sultan answered, "I do not refuse to let him go, but my heart distrusts him. His brothers all promised fair, and what did they do?" But the boy entreated, saying, "Father, if you and mother must be alive tomorrow, you shall eat dates." "Go then," said his father. Then the boy reached the garden, and he told the slaves to leave him, and to return home themselves and sleep. When he was alone, he laid himself down, and slept fast till 1 o'clock, when he arose, and he sat opposite the date tree. Then he took some Indian corn out in one fold of his dress, and some sandy grit out of the other. He chewed the corn till he felt it was growing sleepy, and then he put some grit in his mouth, and that kept him awake until the bird came. It looked at first without seeing him, whispering to itself, "There's no one here," and fluttered lightly on the tree and stretched its beak for the dates. Then the boy stole up softly and caught it by the wing. The bird turned and flew quickly away, but the boy never let go, not even when they soared high into the air. "Son of Adam," the bird said when he tops the mountains, looking small below them, "if you fall, you will be dead long before you reach the ground, so go your way and let me go mine." But the boy answered, "Wherever you go, I go with you. You cannot get rid of me." "I did not eat your dates," persisted the bird, "and the day is dawning. Leave me to go my way." But again the boy answered him, "6 brothers are hateful to my father because you came and stole the dates, and today my father shall see you, and my brother shall see you, and all the people of this town, great and small, will see you, and my father's heart will rejoice." "Well, if you will not leave me, I will throw you off," said the bird. So it flew higher still, so high that the earth shone like one of the other stars. "How much of you will be left if you fall from here?" asked the bird. "If I die, I die," said the bird, "but I will not leave you." And the bird saw that it was no use talking, and went down to the earth again. "Here you are at home, so let me go my way," begged once more, "or at least make a covenant with me." "What covenant?" said the boy. "Save me from the sun," replied the bird, "and I will save you from rain." "How can you do that, and how can I tell if I can trust you?" "Pull a feather from my tail and put it in the fire if you want me, and I will come to you wherever I am." And the boy answered, "Well, I agree. Go your way." "Farewell, my friend. When you call me, it is from the depths of the sea. I will come." The lad watched the bird out of sight, and then he went straight to the date tree. And when he saw dates, his heart was glad, and his body felt stronger, and his eyes brighter than before. And he laughed out loud with joy and said to himself, "This is my luck, mine! Sit in the kitchen, fair date tree. I am going to lie down. What ate you will eat you no more. The sun was high in the sky before the head man, whose business it was, came to look at the date tree, expecting to find it stripped of all its fruit. But when he saw the dates so thick that they almost hid the leaves, he ran back to the house and beat a big drum till everybody came running. Even the little children wanted to know what happened. "What is it? What is it?" said man, they cried. "Oh, it is not the son that the master has, but the lion. This day Sit in the kitchen has uncovered the face before his father." "But how, headman?" "Today is the day people may eat the dates." "Is it true, headman?" "Oh, yes, it is true, but let him sleep till each man has brought forth a present. He who has fowls, let him take fowls. He who has a goat, let him take a goat. He who has rice, let him take the rice." And the people did as he said. And then they took the drum and went to the tree where the boy lay sleeping. And they picked him up and carried him away with horns and clarinets and drums and clapping of hands and shrieks of joy straight to his father's home. When his father heard the noise and saw the baskets made of green leaves brimming over with dates, and a son borne high on the necks of slaves, his heart leaped, and he said to himself, "Today, at last, I shall eat dates." So he called his wife to see what her son had done, and ordered his soldiers to take the boy and bring him to his father. "What news, my son?" he said. "News? Well, I have no news except that if you will open your mouth, you shall see what dates taste like." And he plucked a date and put it into his father's mouth. Welcome, Minnie Mallow. "You are indeed my son," cried the Sultan. "You do not take after those fools, those good-for-nothings. But tell me, what did you do with the bird? For it was you, and only you, who watched for it." "Well, yes, it was I who watched for it and who saw it. And it did not come again, neither for its life, nor for your life, nor for the lives of your children." "Oh, once I had 6 sons, now I have only 1. It is you whom I called a fool, and who have given me the dates. As for the others, I want none of them." Bad parenting. But his wife rose up and went to him and said, "Master, do not, I pray, reject them." And she entreated long until the Sultan granted her prayer, for she loved her 6 elder sons more than her last one. So they all lived quietly in the home until the Sultan's cat went and caught a calf, and the owner of the calf went and told the Sultan. But he answered, "The cat is mine, and the calf mine," and he dared not complain further. 2 days after, the cat caught a cow, and the Sultan was told, "Master, the cat has caught a cow." But he only said, "It is my cow and my cat." And the cat waited a few days, and then it caught a donkey. And they told the Sultan, "Master, the cat has caught a donkey." And he said, "My cat and my donkey." Next it was a horse, and after that a camel. When the Sultan was told, he said, "You don't like the cat and want me to kill it? I shall not kill it. Let it eat the camel. Let it even eat a man." Ever wonder when the story really goes off track? This is one of those times. And it waited until the next day and caught someone's child. And the Sultan was told, "So the cat caught a child." And he said, "The cat is mine, and so the child is mine." Then it caught a grown-up man. After that, the cat left town and took up its abode in a thicket near the road. So if one passed going for water, it devoured them. If it saw a cow going to feed, it devoured them. If it saw a goat, it devoured them. Whatever went along that road, the cat caught and ate it. Then the people went to the Sultan in a body and told him of all the misdeeds of his cat. But he answered as before, "The cat is mine, and the people are mine." And no man dared to kill the cat, which grew bolder and bolder, and at last came into the town to look for its prey. One day the Sultan said to his 6 sons, "I am going into the country to see how the wheat is growing, and you shall come with me." Well, they went merrily along the road until they came to a thicket, when out sprang the cat, and killed 3 of the sons. "The cat! The cat!" shrieked the soldiers who were with him, and this time the Sultan said, "Seek for it and kill it. It is no longer a cat, but a demon." And the soldiers answered him, "Did we not tell you, master, what the cat was doing? And did you not say, 'My cat and my people'?" And he answered, "True, I did say that." Now the youngest son had not gone with the rest, but he stayed at home with his mother. And when he heard that his brothers had been killed by the cat, he said, "Let me go, that I may also slay it." His mother entreated him not to leave her, and he would not listen. But he took his sword and spear and some rice cakes, and went after the cat, which by this time had run to a great distance. The lad spent many days hunting the cat, which now bore the name of the Nunda, eater of people. But though he killed many wild animals, he saw no trace of the enemy he was hunting for. There was no beast, however fierce, that he was afraid of, till at last his father and mother begged him to give up the chase after the Nunda. But he answered, "What I have said I cannot take back. If I am to die, then I die, but every day I must go and seek for the Nunda." And again his father had offered him what he could, even the crown itself, but the boy would hear nothing, and went on his way. Many times his slaves came and told him, "We have seen footprints since the day we shall behold the Nunda." But the footprints never turned out to be those of the Nunda. They wandered far through deserts and great forests, and at length came to the foot of a great hill, and something in the boy's soul whispered that here was the end of the seeking, and today they would find the Nunda. But before they began to climb the mountain, the boy ordered his slaves to cook some rice. And they rubbed a stick to make a fire, and when the fire was kindled, they cooked the rice and ate it. And then they began to climb. Suddenly, when they had almost reached the top, the slave who was in front cried out, "Master! Master!" And the boy pushed to where the slave stood, and the slave said, "Cast your eyes down at the foot of the mountain." And the boy looked, and his soul told him that this was the Nunda. He crept down with his spear in his hand, and then he stopped and gazed below him. "This must be the real Nunda," he thought. "My mother told me its ears were small, and this one's ears are small. She told me that it was broad and not long, and this is broad and not long. She told me it had spots like a civet cat, and this has spots like a civet cat." Then he left the Nunda lying asleep at the foot of the mountain, and went back to his slaves. "We will feast today," he said. "Make cakes of batter and some spring water." And they all ate and drank. And when they finished, he bade them to hide the rest of the food in the thicket. If they slew the Nunda, they might return and eat and sleep before going back to town. and the slaves did as he bade them. It was now afternoon, and the lad said, "It is time we go after the Nunda." Then they went till they reached the bottom, and came to the great forests which lay between them and the Nunda. Here the lad stopped, and ordered every slave that wore 2 clothes to cast away one, and tuck up the other between his legs. For, he said, the wood is not a little one. Perhaps we may get caught by thorns, and perhaps we may run a little before the Nunda, and the cloth might bind our legs, and cause us to fall before it. And they answered, "Good master," and they did as they bade him. Then they crawled on their hands and knees to where the Nunda lay asleep. Noiselessly they crept along till they were quite close to it. Then, at a sign from the boy, they threw their spears. The Nunda did not stir. The spears had done their work. But a great fear seized them all, and they ran away and climbed up the mountain. The sun was setting when they reached the top, and glad they were to take the fruit and cakes and the water which they had hidden away, and sat down and rested themselves. And after they had eaten and were full, they lay down and slept until morning. When the dawn broke, they rose up and cooked more rice and drank more water. After that they walked round back to the mountain, the place where they had left the Nunda. They saw it stretched out where they had found it, stiff and dead. And they took it up and carried it back to the town, singing as they went, "He has killed the Nunda, the eater of people." When his father heard the news, and that his son was come, and was bringing the Nunda with him, he felt the man did not dwell on earth whose joy was greater than his. And the people bowed down to the boy, and gave him presents, and loved him, because he had delivered them from the bondage of fear, and had slain the Nunda. Honestly, the first half of the story had none to do with the rest of it. Okay, yeah. So, went from guarding a date tree to hunting a cat that ate itself into being a monster. Yeah. It really makes you wonder about how some stories just ramble. But anyway, the next story we have is also from Swahili Tales. The Story of Hassebu. Once upon a time there lived a poor woman who had only one child, and he was a little boy called Hassebu. When he ceased to be a baby and his mother thought it was time for him to learn to read, she sent him to school. And after he had done with school, he was put into a shop to learn how to make clothes, and did not learn. But he was put to do silversmith's work, and he did not learn there either. And whatsoever he was taught, he did not learn it. His mother never wished him to do anything he did not like, so she said, "Well, stay at home, my son." And he stayed at home, eating and sleeping. One day the boy said to his mother, "What was my father's business?" "He was a very learned doctor," said she. "Where then are his books?" said Hassebu. "Many days have passed, and I have thought nothing of them, but look inside and see if they are there." So Hassebu looked, and saw they were eaten by insects, all but one book, which he took and read. He was sitting at home one morning, poring over the medicine book, when the neighbors came by and said to his mother, "Give us this boy, that we may go out together to cut wood." For the woodcutter was making a trade, and they loaded several donkeys with wood, and they sold it down. And his mother answered, "Very well, tomorrow I will buy him a donkey, and you can all go together." So the donkey was bought, and the neighbors came, and they worked hard all day, and the evening brought back wood for the town, and sold it for a good sum of money. And for 6 days they went and did the like, but on the 7th day it rained, and the woodcutters ran and hid in the rocks. But Hassebu, who did not mind getting wet, stayed where he was. While he was sitting in the place where the woodcutters had left him, he took up a stone that lay near him, and oddly dropped it on the ground. It rang with a hollow sound, and he called to his companions and said, "Come here and listen to it. The ground seems hollow." "Knock again," they cried, and he knocked, and they listened. "Let us dig," said the boy. And they dug, and they found a large pit like a well, filled up with honey to the brim. "Well, this is better than firewood," they said. "It will bring us more money, and as you have found it, Habasu, it is you must go inside and dip out the honey to give to us, and we will take it to town and sell it, and we will divide the money with you." Don't worry about honey in the ground. The following day, each man brought every bowl and vessel he could find at home, and Habasu filled them all with honey, and this he did every day for 3 months. At the end of that time, the honey was very nearly finished, and there was only a little left, quite at the bottom, and that was very deep brown, very deep down, so deep that it seems that it might be the middle of the earth. Seeing this, the men said to Habasu, "We will put a rope under your arms and let you down, so that you may scrape up all the honey that is left. And when you have done it, we will lower the rope again, and you shall make it fast, and we shall draw you up." I don't see what's going on. "Very well," answered the boy, and he went down, and he scraped and scraped so there was not much honey left to cover the point of a needle. "Now I'm ready," he cried, and they consulted together and said, "Let us leave him in the pit, take his share of the money, and we shall tell his mother, 'Your son was caught by a lion and carried off into the forest, and we tried to follow him but could not.'" Then they arose and went to town and told his mother so, as they had agreed, and she wept so much and made her mourning for very many months. And in the meantime the men divided the money, and one said, "Let us go send a little friend to our friend's mother." And then they sent her some, and every day one took her a piece of rice and some oil, and took her some meat, and one even took her clothes, every day. It did not take long for Habasu to find out that his companions had left him to die in the pit, but he had a brave heart and hoped that he might be able to find his own way out. So at once he began to explore the pit, and found it ran back a long way underground. And by night he slept, and by day he took a little of the honey he had gathered and ate it, and so many days passed by. One morning, while he was sitting on a rock having his breakfast, a large scorpion dropped down at his feet, and he took a stone and killed it, fearing it might sting him. Then suddenly the thought darted into his head, "This scorpion must have come from somewhere. Perhaps there is a hole. I will go and look for it." And he felt it all around the walls of the pit, and found a very little hole in the roof of the pit, with a tiny glimmer of light at the far end of it. Then his heart felt glad, and he took out his knife and dug until the little hole became a big one, and he could wriggle himself through. And when he got outside, he saw a large open space in front of him, and a path leading out of it. He went along the path, on and on, till he reached a large house, with a golden door standing open. Inside was a great hall, and in the middle of the hall a throne set with precious stones, and a sofa spread with the softest cushions. And he went in, and he lay down on it, and fell fast asleep, for he had walked quite a bit. By and by there was a sound of people coming through the courtyard, and the measured tramp of soldiers. This was the king of the snakes coming in to state of his palace. They entered the hall, but all was stopped in surprise, finding a man lying on the king's own bed. The soldiers wished to kill him at once, but the king said, "Let him alone. Put me on a chair." And the soldiers who were carrying him knelt on the floor, and he slid from their shoulders to the chair. When he was seated comfortably, he turned to his soldiers and bade them to wake the stranger gently. Then they woke him, and he sat up and saw so many snakes all around him, and one of them was beautiful and dressed in royal robes. "Who are you?" asked Hassebu. "I am the king of snakes," was the reply, "and this is my palace. And will you tell me who you are and where you come from?" "Well, my name is Hassebu, but whence I come I don't really know whether I go." "Then stay with me a little while," said the king, and he bade his soldiers bring him water and spring from fruits of the forest, and to set them before his guest. For some days Hassebu rested and feasted in the palace of the king of snakes, and then began to long for his mother in his own country. So he said to the king of snakes, "Send me home, I pray." But the king of snakes answered, "When you go home, you will do me evil." "I will do you no evil," said Hassebu. "Send me home, I pray." But the king said, "I know it. I will send you home, and you will come back and kill me. I dare not do it." But Hassebu begged so hard that at last the king said, "Swear to me that when you get home, you will not go to bathe where many people are gathered." But Hassebu swore, and the king ordered his soldiers to take Hassebu in sight of his native city. Then he went straight to his mother's house, and the heart of his mother was glad. Now, the sultan of the city was very ill, and all the wise men said that the only thing to cure him was the flesh of the king of the snakes, and that the only man who could get to it was a man with a strange mark on his chest. So the vizier had set people to watch at the public baths, so to see if such a man came there. For 3 days Hassebu remembered his promise to the king of snakes, and did not go near the baths. Then came a morning so hot he could hardly breathe, and he forgot all about it. The moment he had slipped off his robe, he was taken before the vizier, who said to him, "Lead us to the place where the king of snakes lives." "I do not know it," answered he, but the vizier did not believe him, and had him bound and beaten until his back was all torn. Then Hassebu cried, "Loose me, that I might take you." They went together a long way till they reached the palace of the king of snakes. And Hassebu said to the king, "It was not I. Look at my back, and you'll see how they drove me to it." "Who has beaten you like this?" said the king. "It was the vizier," said Hassebu. "Then I am already dead," said the king sadly, "but you must carry me there yourself." So Hassebu carried him, and on the way the king said, "When I arrive, I shall be killed, and my flesh will be cooked. But take some of the water that I am boiled in, and put it in a bottle and lay it on one side. The vizier will tell you to drink it, but be careful not to do so. Then take some more of the water and drink it, and you will become a great physician. And the third will supply you give to the Sultan. And when the vizier comes to you and asks, "Did you drink what I gave you?" you must answer, "I did, and this is for you." And he will drink it and die, and your soul will rest. And they went their way to the town, and all happened as the king of snakes had said. And the Sultan loved Hassebu, who became a great physician and cured many sick people. But he was always sorry for the poor king of the snakes. Okay. The ads are coming up quickly, so I'm going to go ahead and take the break here so we can get into the next story as soon as we come back. So, I will see you in a bit. Welcome back from the ads. So I hope you're back from the ads. Should be back from the ads. Twitch says the ads are over, so I hope you're back. Anyway, let's continue our fabulous Friday Night of Fairy Tales. Now, I do like how Andrew Lang and Company's sources for the stories are themselves translations of stories. Because this one is a Japanese tale, but they got it from a German book. Oddly enough, a German book of Japanese fairy tales called the Japanische Märchen. But anyway, our next fabulous fairy tale for this Friday night. There hasn't been a single story with singing in it yet. That's probably a good thing. Anyway, The Maiden with the Wooden Helmet. In a little village in the country of Japan, there lived long, long ago a man and his wife. For many years they were happy and prosperous, but bad times came, and at last nothing was left for them but their daughter, who was as beautiful as the morning. The neighbors were very kind and would have done anything they could to help the poor friends. Thank you for the stretch and hydrate. And the applause. The neighbors very, very kind and would have done anything they could to help the poor friends. But the old couple felt that since everything had changed, they would rather go elsewhere. So one day they set off to bury themselves in the country, taking their daughter with them. Now, the mother and daughter had plenty to do in keeping of the house clean and looking after the garden, but the man would sit for hours together, gazing in front of them, and thinking of the riches that once were his. Each day he grew more and more wretched, till at length he took to his bed and never got up again. His wife and daughter wept bitterly for his loss, and it was many months before they could take pleasure in anything. Then one morning the mother suddenly looked at the girl, and found that she had grown still more lovely than before. Once her heart would have been glad at the sight, but now that they were two alone in the world, she feared some harm might come of it. So, like a good mother, she tried to teach her daughter all that she knew, and to bring her up in the always busy, so that she would never have time to think about herself. And the girl was a good girl, and listened to all her mother's lessons, and so the years passed away. At last, one wet spring, the mother caught cold, and though it was in the beginning she did not pay much attention to it, she gradually grew more and more ill, and knew that she had not long to live. Then she called her daughter, and told her that very soon she would be alone in the world, and that she must take care of herself, as there would be no one to take care of her. And because it was more difficult for beautiful women to pass unheeded than for others, she bade her fetch a wooden helmet out of the next room and put it on her head, and pull it low over her brows, so that nearly her whole face would be covered and lie in shadow. The girl did as she was bid, and her beauty was so hidden beneath the wooden cap, which covered all of her hair, that she might have gone through any crowd and no one would have looked twice at her. And when she saw this, the heart of her mother was at rest, and then she lay back into her bed and died. The girl wept for many days, but by and by she felt that Being alone in the world, she must go and get work, for she had only herself to depend upon. There was none to be got by staying where she was, so she made her clothes into a bundle and walked over the hills till she reached the house of a man who owned the fields in that part of the country. And she took service with him and labored for him early and late. And every night, when she went to bed, she was at peace, for she had not forgotten one thing that she had promised her mother. And however hot the sun might be, she always kept the wooden helmet on her head. And so the people gave her the nickname Hachachime. Hachachime. In spite, however, all of her care, her fame of her beauty spread abroad. Many an impudent young men were always to be found in the world, stole softly up behind her while she was at work, and tried to lift off her wooden helmet. But the girl would have nothing to say to them, and only bade them to be off. Then they began to talk to her, but she never answered them, and went on with that what she had been doing, though her wages were low and food not very plentiful. Still, she could manage to live, and that was enough. One day her master happened to pass through the field where she was working, and was struck by her industry, and stopped to watch her. After a while he put one or two questions to her, and then led her into his house, and told her that henceforward her only duty should be to tend to his sick wife. From this time the girl felt as if all her troubles had ended, but the worst of them was yet to come. Not very long after, Hatsashime had become maid to the sick woman. The eldest son of the house returned home to Kyoto, where he had been studying for all sorts of things. He was tired of the splendors of the town and its pleasures, and was glad to be back to the green country, among the peach blossoms and sweet flowers. Strolling about in the early morning, he caught sight of the girl with the odd woman helmet on her head, and immediately went to his mother to ask who she was and where she was from, and why she wore that strange thing over her face. His mother answered that it was a whim, and nobody could persuade her to lay it aside, whereat the young man laughed and kept his thoughts to himself. One hot day, however, he happened to be going towards home, when he caught sight of his mother's waiting-maid kneeling by a little stream that flowed through the garden, splashing some water on her face. The helmet was pushed on one side, and as the youth stood watching from behind the tree, he had a glimpse of the girl's great beauty, and he was determined that no one else should be his wife. But when he told his family of his resolve to marry the girl, they were very angry, and made up all sorts of wicked stories about her. However, they might have spared themselves the trouble, as he only knew it was idle talk. "I have merely to remain firm," thought he, "and they will give in." It was such a good match for the girl that it was never occurred to anyone that she would refuse the young man. But so it was. It would not be right, she felt, to make a quarrel in the house, and though the secret she wept bitterly for a long while, nothing would make her change her mind. At length one night her mother appeared to her in a dream, and bade her marry the young man. So the next time he asked, as he did nearly every day, to his surprise and joy, she consented. The parents then saw that they had better make of a bad business, and set about making grand preparations suitable for the occasion. Of course, the neighbors had many ill-natured things about the wooden helmet, but the bridegroom was too happy to care, and only laughed at them. When everything was ready for the feast, the bride was dressed in the most beautiful embroidered dress to be found in Japan. The maids took hold of the helmet to lift it off her head, so that they might at least do the hair in the latest fashion. But the helmet would not come, and the harder they pulled, the faster it seemed to be, till the poor girl yelled out in pain. Hearing her cries, the bridegroom ran in and soothed her, and declared that she should be married in the helmet, as she would not be married without. Then the ceremonies began, and the bridal pair sat together, and a cup of wine was brought to them. Out of each they had to drink, and when they had drunk it all, the cup was empty. A wonderful thing happened. The helmet suddenly burst out with a loud noise, and fell to pieces on the ground. and as they all turned round they saw the floor was covered with precious stones which had fallen out of it. But the guests were less astonished at the brilliancy of the diamonds than at the beauty of the bride, which was beyond anything they had ever seen or heard of. The night was passed in singing and dancing, and then the bride and bridegroom went to their own house, where they lived till they died, and had many children who were famous throughout Japan for their goodness and beauty. All right then. She wore a bucket on her head for years. What can I say? She honored the Mandalorian killer. Anyway. My next story, also from the Japanese Shimashin. The Monkey and the Jellyfish. Children must often have wondered why jellyfish have no shells, like so many other creatures that washed up every day on the beach. In old times, this was not so. The jellyfish had a hard shell, as many of them, but he lost it through no fault of his own. The sea queen Ohotime, whom you read of in the story of Urasha and Matoro, grew suddenly very ill. The swiftest messengers were sent hurrying to fetch the best doctors from every country under the sea, but it was of no use. The queen grew rapidly worse instead of better. Everyone had almost given up hope, when one day the doctor arrived who was cleverer than the rest, and said the only thing that could cure her was the liver of an ape. Now, apes do not dwell under the sea. So the council of the wisest heads of the nations was called to consider the question on how a liver could be obtained. At length it was decided that the turtle, whose prudence was well known, should swim to land and contrive to catch a living ape and bring him safely into the ocean kingdom. It was easy enough for the council to entrust this mission to a turtle, but not at all so easy for him to fulfill it. However, he swam to a part of the coast that was covered with tall trees, where he thought apes were likely to be, for he was old and had seen many things. It was some time before he caught sight of any monkeys, and he often grew tired of watching for them, so that one hot day he fell fast asleep, in spite of his efforts to stay awake. By and by, some apes, who had been peeping at him from the tops of their trees, where they had been carefully hidden from the turtle's eyes, stole noiselessly down and stood around staring at him, for they had never seen a turtle before, and did not know what to make of it. At last one young monkey, bolder than the rest, stooped down and stroked the shining shell that the strange new creature wore on his back. The movement, gentle as it was, woke the turtle. With one swipe, he seized the monkey's hand in his mouth and held it tight, and in spite of every effort to pull away. The other apes, seeing that the turtle was not to be trifled with, all ran off, leaving their young brother to his fate. Hey, Jiva. Then the turtle said to the monkey, If And the turtle said to the monkey, America! Fuck yeah! Okay. Timing was perfect on that. Then the turtle said to the monkey, If you will be quiet and do what I tell you, I won't hurt you, but you must get on my back and come with me. The monkey, seeing that there was no help for it, did as he was bid. Indeed, he could not have resisted, as his hand was still in the turtle's mouth. Delighted at having seized his prize, the turtle hastened back to shore and plunged quickly into the water. He swam faster than he had ever done before and soon reached the royal palace. Shouts of joy broke forth from all the attendants when he was seen approaching, and from the bottom to tell the monkey that the queen was... Shouts of joy broke forth from the attendants when he was seen approaching, and some of them ran to tell the queen that the monkey was there, and that long before she would be as well as ever she was. In fact, so great was their relief that they gave the monkey such a kind welcome, and were anxious to make him happy and comfortable, that they soon forgot all the fears that had beset him to his fate, and was generally quite at ease, though every now and then a fit of homesickness would come over him, and he would hide himself in a dark corner till it had passed. It was during one of these attacks of sadness that a jellyfish happened to swim by, and at that time jellyfish had shells. At the sight of the gay and lively monkey crouching under a tall rock, with his eyes closed and his head bent, the jellyfish was filled with pity and stopped, saying, "Ah, poor fellow, no wonder you weep. A few days more they will come and kill you and give your liver to the queen to eat." "Oh, not at all!" Hold on. Skip the line. The monkey shrank back, horrified at these words, and asked the jellyfish what crime he had committed that deserved death. None at all," replied the jellyfish. "But your liver's the only thing that will cure our queen, and how can we get it without killing you? You had better submit to your fate and make no noise of it, for though I pity you from my heart, there is no way of helping you." Then he went away, leaving the ape cold with horror. At first he felt as if his liver was already being taken from his body, but soon he began to wonder if there was no means of escaping this terrible death, and at length he invented a plan which he thought he could do. For a few days he pretended to be as gay and happy as before, but when the sun went down and the rain fell in torrents, he wept and howled from dawn till dark, till the turtle, who was his head keeper, heard him and came to see what was the matter. Then the monkey told him that before he left home he had hung his liver out to dry in a bush, and if it was going to rain like this it would become quite useless. And the rogue made such a fuss and moaning that he would have melted a heart of stone, and nothing would content him but that somebody should carry him back to land and let him fetch his liver again. The queen's counselors were not the wisest people, and they decided between them that the turtle should take the monkey back to his native land and allow him to get his liver off the bush, but desired the turtle not lose sight of his charge for a single moment. The monkey knew this, and trusted to his power of beguiling the turtle when the time came, and mounted on his back with feelings of joy, which he was, however, careful to conceal. They set out, and in a few hours were wandering about the forest where the ape had first been caught, and when the monkey saw his family peering out from the treetops, he swung himself up by the nearest branch, just managing to save his hind leg from being seized by the turtle. He told them all the dreadful things that had happened to him, and gave a war cry which brought the rest of the tribe from the neighboring hills. At a word from him, they rushed in a body to the unfortunate turtle and threw him on his back, and tore off the shell that covered his body. Then with mocking words they hunted him to the shore, and took him to the sea, which he was only too thankful to reach alive. Faint and exhausted, he entered the queen's palace, for the cold of the water struck upon his naked body, and made him feel ill and miserable. But wretched though he was, he had to appear before the queen's advisers and tell them what had befallen him, and how he had suffered the monkey to escape. But, as sometimes happened, the turtle was allowed to go scot-free, and had his shell given back to him, and all the punishment fell and the poor jellyfish, who was condemned to the queen to go shieldless forever after. Okay then. America! Fuck yeah. Okay. Our next story for the evening. The Headless Dwarfs. There was once a minister who spent his whole time in trying to find a servant who would undertake to ring the church bells at midnight, in addition to all the other duties. Of course, it was not everyone who cared to get up in the middle of the night, when he had been working all day, but still many had agreed to it. But the strange thing was that no sooner had the servant set forth to perform his task than he disappeared, as if the earth had swallowed him up. No bells were rung, and no ringer ever came back. The minister did his best to keep the matter secret, but it leaked out that, and the end of it was no one could enter his service. Indeed, there were even those who whispered that the minister himself had murdered the missing men. It was to no surprise that Sunday after Sunday the minister gave out from his pulpit that double wages should be paid to anyone who filled the sacred duty of ringing the bells of the church. No one took the slightest notice of any offer he might make, and the poor man was in despair when one day, as he was standing at his house door, a youth known to the village as Clever Hans came up to him. "I'm tired of living with a miser who will not give me enough to eat and drink," he said, "and I'm ready to do all you want." "Very good, my son," replied the minister. "You shall have the chance of proving your courage this very night. Tomorrow we will settle what your wages will be." Hans was quite content at the proposal, and went straight to the kitchen to begin his work, not knowing that his new master was as stingy as his previous one. In the hope that his presence might be a restraint upon them, the minister used to sit at the table during his servants' meals, and would extort them to drink much and often, thinking they would not be able to eat as well, and the beef was dearer than beer. But Hans had met his match, and the minister found that his costs, in this case, at any rate, a full cup did not mean an empty plate. Which is probably why waiters and waitresses keep your cup full. No. About an hour before midnight, Hans entered the church and locked the door behind him, and what was his surprise when, in place of the darkness and silence he expected, he found the church brilliantly lighted, and a crowd of people sitting around a table, playing cards. Hans felt no fear at this strange sight, or was prudent enough to hide it if he did, and was going to the table, and sat amongst the players. One of them looked up and asked, "My friend, what are you doing here?" And Hans gazed at him for a moment, and laughed and answered, "Well, if anybody has the right to put that question, it is I, and if I do not put it up, it is certainly be wiser for you not to do so." Then he picked up some cards and played with the unknown men as if he had known them all his life. The luck was on his side, and soon the money of the other gamblers found its way into his pockets. On the stroke of midnight, the cock crowed, and the instant lights, table, and cards and people had all vanished, and Hans was left alone. He groped about some of the time until he found the staircase in the tower. Then he began to feel his way up the steps. On the first landing, a glimmer of light came through a slit in the wall, and he saw a tiny man sitting there, without a head. "Oh, my little fellow, what are you doing there?" asked Hans, and without waiting for an answer, he gave him a kick, which sent him flying down the stairs. Then he climbed higher still, finding as he went the dumb watchers sitting on every landing, and treated them the same as he had done the first. As he reached the top, and as he paused a moment to look around him, he saw another headless man cowering in the very bell itself, waiting until Hans should seize the bell pull in order to strike him a blow with the clapper, which would soon have made an end of him. Stop, my little friend, cried Hans. That is not part of the bargain. Perhaps you saw how your comrades walked down the stairs, and you are going after them. But as you are the highest place, you shall make a more dignified exit and follow them through the window. With these words, he began to climb the ladder, and in order to take the little man from the bell and carry out his threat. The dwarf cried out imploringly, "Oh, brother, spare my life, and I promise that neither I nor my comrades will ever trouble you any more. I am small and weak, and who knows whether some day I shall be able to reward you." "You wretched little shrimp," replied Hans. "A good deal of your gratitude is likely to do me. But as I happen to be feeling in a cheerful mood tonight, I will let you have your life. But take care how you come across me again, or you may not escape so easily." The headless man thanked him humbly, then hid slowly down the bell ropes and ran out the steps of the tower as he left behind a fire. Then Hans began to ring lustily. When the minister heard the sound of the midnight bells, he wondered greatly, but rejoiced that he had at last found someone who would ring them and trust his duty. Hans rung the bells for some time, and then went to the hayloft and fast fell asleep. Now, it is a custom for the minister to get up very early and to go around to make sure that the men were all at their work. This morning, how everyone was in their place, except Hans, and no one knew anything about him. 9 o'clock came, and no Hans. But when the 11 struck, the minister began to fear that he had vanished like the ringers who had gone before him. When, however, the servants all gathered round the table for dinner, Hans at last made his appearance, stretching himself and yawning. "Where have you been all this time?" asked the minister. "Asleep," said Hans. "Asleep!" exclaimed the minister in astonishment. "You don't mean to tell me that you can go on sleeping till midday?" Pfft, rookie. "That is exactly what I mean," replied Hans. "If one works in the night, one must sleep in the day, and if one works in the day, one must sleep at night. If you can find somebody else to ring the bells at midnight, I am ready to begin work at dawn. But if you want me to ring the bell at midnight, I must go sleeping until noon, at the very earliest." Makes sense. The minister tried to argue the point with him, but at length the following agreement was come to. Hans was to give up the ringing, and was to work like the rest of them from sunrise to sunset, with the exception of an hour after breakfast and an hour after dinner, when he was to go to sleep. "Of course," said the minister, "it may happen now and then, especially in winter when the days are short, that you will have to work a little longer to get something finished." "Not at all," answered Hans. "Unless I were to leave work earlier in the summer, I will not do a stroke more than I have promised, and that is from dawn till dark, so you know what you have to expect." A few weeks later, the minister was asked to attend a christening in the neighboring town. He bade Hans to come with him, but as the town was only a few hours' ride from where he lived, the minister was much surprised to see Hans come forth laden with a bag containing food. "Oh, what are you taking that for?" asked the minister. "We shall be there before dark." "Who knows?" replied Hans. "Things may happen to delay your journey, and I need not remind you that our contract at the moment is that the sun sets, I cease to be your servant. If we don't reach the town while it is still daylight, I shall leave you to shift for yourself." The minister thought he was joking, and made no further remark. But when they had left the village behind them and had ridden a few miles, they found that snow had fallen during the night, and had been blown by the wind into drifts. This hindered their progress, and by the time they had entered the thick wood which lay between them and their destination, the sun was already touching the tops of the trees. The horses plowed their way slowly through the deep snowdrift, and as they went, Hans kept turning to look at the sun, which lay at their backs. Is there anything behind you? Asked the minister. Or what is it that you're always turning around for? I turn around because I have no eyes in the back of my head, said Hans. Cease talking nonsense, replied the minister, and give all your mind to getting us to the town before nightfall. But Hans did not answer, but rode on steadily, though every now and then he cast a glance over his shoulder. When they arrived in the middle of the wood, the sun sank altogether. Then Hans reined up his horse and took his knapsack and jumped out of the sleigh. Where are you going? Are you mad? Asked the minister, but Hans answered quietly, The sun has set, my workday is over, and I'm going to camp here for the night. In vain the master prayed and threatened, and promised Hans a large reward if he would only drive him off. The young man was not to be moved. Are you not ashamed to urge me to break my word? He said. If you want me to reach the town tonight, you must go alone. The hour of my freedom is struck, and I cannot go with you. My good Hans, entreated the minister, I really ought to leave you here. Consider what danger you will be in. Yonder, as you see, the gallows is set up, and 2 evildoers are hanging on it. You could not possibly sleep with such ghastly neighbors. Why not? Asked Hans. Those gallows birds hang high in the air, and my camp will be on the ground. We shall have nothing to do with each other. As he spoke, he turned his back to the minister and went his way. There was no help for it, and the minister had to push on by himself if he expected to arrive in time for the christening. His friends were much surprised to see him drive up without a coachman, and thought some accident had happened. But when he told them of his conversation with Hans, they did not know which was more foolish, the master or the man. It would have mattered little to Hans had he known that they were saying or thinking of him. He had satisfied his hunger with the food he had tied in his knapsack, lit his pipe, and pitched his tent under the boughs of a tree, and wrapped himself in his furs, and went sound asleep. After some hours, he awakened by a sudden noise, and sat up and looked about him. The moon was shining brightly above his head, and close by stood 2 headless dwarfs talking angrily. At the sight of Hans, the little dwarfs cried out, It is he! It is he! And one of them stepped clear and exclaimed, Ah, my old friend, it is lucky chance that has brought us here. My bones still ache from the fall down the steps of the tower. I dare you have not forgotten that night. Now it is your turn, your bones. Hey, comrades, make haste, make haste! Like a swarm of midges, a host of tiny, headless creatures seemed to spring straight up out of the ground, and every one armed with a club. Although they were small, they were in such numbers that they struck so hard that even a strong man could do nothing against them. Hans thought his last hour had come, and just when the fight was at its hottest, another little dwarf arrived on the scene. Oh, comrades! He shouted, turning to the attacking party. This man once did me a service, and I am his debtor. When I was in his power, he granted me my life, and even if he did throw you downstairs, a warm bath soon cured your bruises. You must forgive him and go quietly home. The headless dwarves listened to his words and disappeared as suddenly as they had come. As soon as Hans recovered himself a little, he looked at his rescuer, and saw that he was the dwarf that had found seated at the church bell. Ah, said the dwarf, seating himself quietly beside the tree, you laughed at me when I told you that some day I might do you a good turn. Now you see I was right. Perhaps you will learn for the future to not despise any creature, no matter how small. I thank you from my heart, answered Hans. My bones are still sore from their blows, and had it not been for you, I should indeed have fared badly. I have almost paid my debt, went the little man, but as you have suffered already, I will do more, and give a piece of my information. You need no remain longer in the service of the stingy minister, but when you get home tomorrow, go at once to the north corner of the church. There you will find a large stone built into the wall, not cemented like the rest. The day after tomorrow, when the moon is full, and at midnight you must go to the spot and get some stone out with the pickaxe. Under the stone lies a great treasure, which has been hidden there in the time of war. Besides church plate, you will find bags of money which have been lying in this place for over 100 years, and no one knows to whom it all belongs. A third of this money you must give to the poor, and the rest you may keep for yourself." As he finished, the cocks of the village crowed, and the little man was nowhere to be seen. Hans found that his limbs no longer pained him, and lay for some time thinking of the hidden treasure. And towards morning, he fell asleep. The sun was high in the heavens when the minister returned from the town. "Hans," he said, "what a fool you were not to come with me yesterday. I was well feasted and entertained, and have money in my pocket into the bargain," he went on, rattling some coins as he spoke, to make Hans understand how much he had lost. Sir," replied Hans calmly, "in order to have gained so much money, you have lain awake all night, but I have earned 100 times that while I was sleeping soundly." "How did you manage that?" answered the minister eagerly, but Hans answered, "It's only fools who boast of their farthings. Wise men take care to hide their crowns." Coming from the minister who had just shaken the coin sack. They drove home, and Hans neglected none of his duties, but put up the horses and gave them their food before going to the church corner, where he found the loose stone, exactly in the place described by the dwarf. Then he returned to his work. That first night of the full moon, when the whole village was asleep, he stole out, armed with a pickaxe, and with much difficulty succeeded in dislodging the stone from its place. Sure enough, there was the hole, and in the hole lay the treasure, exactly as the little man had said. The following Sunday he handed over a third part to the village poor, and informed the minister that he wished to break his bond of service. As, however, he did not claim any wages, the minister made no objections, but allowed him to do as he wished. So Hans went and bought himself a large house, and married a young wife, and lived happily and prosperously to the end of his days. Ooh, Porygon Z. Good timing. Ouch. In here, there's a Porygon Z in chat. What is this next one? Yeah. 4 pages. Not too bad. I gotta love those fairy tales with long titles, because it's not really a title, it's just the description. Our next story being The Young Man Who Would Have His Eyes Opened. Once upon a time there lived a youth who was never happy unless he was prying into something that other people knew nothing about. After he had learned to understand the language of birds and of beasts, he discovered, accidentally, that a great deal took place under the cover of night which mortal eyes never saw. From that moment he could not rest till he had seen these hidden secrets were laid bare to him, and spent the whole time wandering from one wizard to another, begging them to open his eyes, but found that none would help him. At length he reached an old magician named Mana, whose learning was greater than that of the rest, and who could tell him all he wanted to know. But when the old man had listened attentively to him, he said warningly, "My son, do not follow after empty knowledge. which will not bring you happiness, but rather evil. Much is hidden from the eyes of men because they did not know everything. Their hearts would no longer be at peace. Knowledge kills joy. Therefore think well what you are doing, or some day you will repent it. But if you will not take my advice, then truly I can show you the secrets of the night. Only you will need more than a man's courage to bear the sight. He stopped and looked at the young man, who nodded his head, and the wizard continued. Tomorrow night you must go to the place where, once in 7 years, the Serpent King gives a great feast to his whole court. In front of him stands a golden bowl filled with goat's milk, and if you manage to dip a piece of bread in this milk and eat it before your blood shall fly, you will understand all the secrets of the night that are hidden from other men. It is lucky for you that the Serpent King's feasts happen to fall this year, otherwise you would have a long wait for it. But take care to be quick and bold, or it will be the worse for you. The young man thanked the wizard for his counsel and went his way firmly to carry out on his purpose, even if he paid for it with his life. When night came, he set out for a wide, lonely moor, where the Serpent King held his feast. With sharpened eyes, he looked eagerly all around him, but could see nothing but a multitude of small hillocks that lay motionless under the moonlight. He crouched behind a bush for some time until he felt that midnight could not be far off, when suddenly there rose in the middle of the moor a brilliant glow, as if a star was shining over one of the hills. At the same time, all the hillocks began to writhe and to crawl, and from each one came hundreds of serpents that made straight for the glow, where they knew they should find their king. When they reached the hillock where he dwelt, which was higher and broader than the rest, and had bright light hanging over the top, they coiled themselves up and waited. The whir and confusion from all the serpent houses were so great that the youth did not dare to advance one step, but remained where he was, watching intently all that went on. But at last he began to take courage and moved on step by step. What he saw was creepier than creepy, and surpassed all he had ever dreamt about. Thousands of snakes, big and little and of every color, were gathered together in one great cluster around a huge serpent, whose body was as thick as a beam, and which had on its head a golden crown from which the light sprang. Their hissings and darting tongues so terrified the young man that his heart sank, and he felt he should never have courage to push to a certain death, when suddenly he caught sight of the golden bowl in front of the Serpent King, and knew that if he had lost his chance, it would never come back. So with his hair standing on end and his blood frozen in his veins, he crept forward. Oh, what a noise and whir arose among those serpents! Thousands of heads were reared and tongues were stretched out to sting the intruder to death. But happily for him, their bodies were so closely entwined with one another that they could not disentangle themselves. Like lightning, he seized a bit of bread and dipped it in the bowl and put it in his mouth and dashed away as if fire was pursuing him. On he flew as a whole army of foes were at his heels, and he seemed to hear the noise of their approach growing nearer and nearer. At length his breath failed him, and he threw himself almost senseless on the turf. While he lay there, dreadful screams haunted him. He thought that the Serpent King, with a fiery crown, had twined itself around him, and was crushing out his life. With a loud shriek he sprang up to do battle with his enemy, when he saw that it was the rays of the sun which had weakened him. He rubbed his eyes and looked around, but nothing could he see of the foes of the past night. and the moor where he had run into such danger must be at least a mile away. But it was no dream that he had run hard and fast, or that he had drunk from the magic goat's milk. When he felt his limbs, he found them whole. His joy was great that he had come through such perils with a sound skin. After the fatigues and terrors of the night, he lay still till midday, but made up his mind he would go that very evening into the forest to try what the goat's milk could really do for him. And when it would now be able to understand that he had been a mystery to him, and once in the forest his doubts were set at rest, for he saw that no mortal eyes had ever seen before. Beneath the trees were golden pavilions with flags of silver all brightly lighted up. He was still wondering why the pavilions were there when a noise was heard among the trees as if the wind had suddenly got up, and on all sides beautiful maidens stepped from the woods into the bright light of the moon. These were the wood nymphs, daughters of the Earth Mother, who came every night to hold their dances in the forest. The young man, watching from his hidden place, wished he had 1,000 eyes in his head, for 2 were not nearly enough for the sight before him. The dances lasting till the first streaks of dawn. Then a silvery veil seemed to be drawn over the ladies, and they vanished from sight. But the young man remained where he was till the sun was high in the heavens, and then he went home. He felt that day to be endless, and counted the minutes till night should come, and he might return to the forest. But when he last got there, he found neither pavilions nor nymphs, and though he went back many nights after, he never saw them again. Still, he thought about them night and day, and ceased to care about anything in the world, but was sick to the end of his life with longing for the beautiful vision. And that was the way he learned that the wizard had truly spoken, that he said, "Blindness is man's highest good." He went through a lot to see nymphs for one night. Anyway, let's do one more story for the night. Shall we? The Boys with the Golden Stars. Once upon a time, what happened did happen, and if it had not happened, you would never have heard this story. Well, once upon a time there lived an emperor who had half a world all to himself to rule over, and in this world dwelt an old herd and his wife and his 3 daughters, Anna, Stana, and Lapizza. Anna, the eldest, was so beautiful that when she took the sheep to the pasture, they forgot to eat as long as she was walking with them. Stana, the second, was so beautiful that when she was driving the flock, the wolves protected the sheep. But Lapizza, the youngest, with skin as white as the foam on the milk, with hair as soft as a lamb's softest wool, was both as beautiful as her sisters together, and beautiful as she alone could be. One summer day, when the rays of the sun were pouring down on the earth, the 3 sisters went to the woods on the outskirts of the mountain to pick strawberries. As they were looking about to find the largest berries grew, they heard a tramp of horses approaching, so loud that they would have thought the whole army was riding by. But, as it was only the emperor who went to hunt with his friends and attendants. They were all fine, handsome young men who sat their horses as though they were part of them, and the finest and handsomest of all was the young emperor himself. As they drew near the three sisters and marked their beauty, they checked their horses and rode slowly by. "Sisters, sisters," said Anna as they passed by, "if one of those young men should make me his wife, I would bake him a loaf of bread which should keep him young and brave forever." "And if I," said Steina, "should be the one chosen, I would weave my husband a shirt which will keep him unscathed when he fights with dragons. When he goes through water, he will never even be wet, or if through fire, it will not scorch him." "And I," said Laputa, "will give the man who chooses me 2 boys, twins, each with a golden star on their forehead, as bright as those in the sky." And as though they spoke, the young men heard and turned their horses' heads. "I will take you at your word and make you mine, most lovely of empresses," cried the emperor, and swung Laputa and her strawberries on the horse before him. "And I will have you, and I you," exclaimed 2 of his friends, and they all rode back to the palace together. The following morning, the marriage ceremony took place, and for 3 days and 3 nights there was nothing but feasting over the whole kingdom. And when the rejoicings were over, the news was in everybody's mouth that Anna had sent for corn, and had made the loaf from which she had spoken in the strawberry beds. And then more days and nights passed, and this rumor was succeeded by another, that Stana had procured some flax, and had dried it, and combed it, and spun it into linen, and sewed it herself into the shirt of which she had spoken over the strawberry beds. Now the emperor had a stepmother, and she had a daughter of her first husband, who lived in her with the palace. The girl's mother was always believed that her daughter would be the empress, and not the milk-white maiden, a child of a mere shepherd. So she hated the girl with all her heart, and only bided her time to do her ill. But if she could do nothing as long as the emperor remained with his wife night and day, she began to wonder what she could do to get him away from her. At last, when everything else had failed, she managed to make her brother, who was a king of the neighboring country, declare war against the emperor, and besiege some of his frontier towns with a large army. This time her scheme was successful. The young emperor sprang up in wrath the moment he heard the news, and vowed that nothing, not even his wife, should hinder him from giving battle. He hastily assembled whatever soldiers he had at hand, and set off at once to meet the enemy. The other king had not reckoned on the swiftness of the movements, and was not quite ready to receive him. The emperor fell on him, and when he was off his guard, he routed his enemy completely. Then the victory was won, and the terms of peace hastily drawn up. He rode home as fast as his horse could carry him, and reached the palace on the 3rd day. But early that morning, when the stars were growing pale in the sky, 2 little boys with golden hair and stars on their foreheads were born to Laputa. And the stepmother, who was watching, took them away and dug a hole in the corner of the palace under the windows of the emperor, and put them in. And while their stead she placed 2 little puppies. The emperor came into the palace, and when they were told the news, he went straight to Laputa's room. No words were needed. He saw with his own eyes that Laputa had not kept her promise she had made at the strawberry beds, and though it nearly broke his heart, he must give orders for her punishment. So he went out sadly and told his guards that the empress was to be buried in the earth up to her neck, so that everyone might know what happened to those who dared to deceive the emperor. Not many days after, the stepmother's wish was fulfilled. The emperor took her daughter to wife, and again the rejoicings lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. But let us see what happened to the two boys. The poor little babies had found no rest, even in their graves, and in the place where they had been buried there sprang up two beautiful young aspens, and the stepmother, who hated the sight of the trees, which reminded her of her crime, gave orders that they should be uprooted. But the emperor had heard of it, and forbade the trees to be touched, saying, "Let them alone. I'd like to see them. They are the finest aspens I've ever seen." So the aspens grew as no aspens had ever grown before, and each day they added a year's growth, and each night they added a year's growth, and at dawn, when the stars faded out of the sun, they grew 3 years' growth in the twinkling of an eye. And their boughs swept across the palace windows, and when the wind moved them softly, the emperor would sit and listen to them all day long. The stepmother knew what it meant, and her mind never ceased from trying to invent some way to destroy the trees. It was not an easy thing, but a woman's will can press milk out of a stone, and her cunning will overcome heroes. What craft will not do soft words may attain, and if those did not succeed, there still remains the resource of tears. One morning, the emperor sat on the edge of her husband's bed and began to coax him in all sorts of pretty ways. It was some time before the bait took, but at length, even emperors are only men. "Well, well," he said at last, "have your way and cut down the trees, but out of one we shall make a bed for me, and out of the other one for you." And with this, the empress was forced to be content. The aspens were cut down the next morning, and before night a new bed had been placed in the emperor's room. Now, when the emperor lay down in it, it seemed as if he had grown 100 times heavier than usual, and yet he felt a kind of calm that was quite new to him. The empress felt as if she was lying on thorns and nettles and could not close her eyes. When the emperor was fast asleep, the bed began to crack loudly, and to the empress each crack had a meaning. She felt as if she were listening to the language which no one but herself could understand. "Is it too heavy for you, little brother?" asked one of the beds. "Oh, no, it is not heavy at all," answered the bed in which the emperor was sleeping. "I feel nothing but joy now that my beloved father rests over me." "It is very heavy for me," said the other bed, "for on the evil lies my soul." And so they talked till morning, the empress listening all the while. By daybreak, the empress was determined on how to get rid of the beds. She would have 2 others made exactly like them, and when the emperor had gone hunting, they should be replaced in the room. This was done, and the aspen beds were burnt in a large fire, till only a little heap of ashes was left. While they were burning, the emperor seemed to hear the same words which she alone could hear. Then she stooped and gathered the ashes and scattered them to the 4 winds, so that they might blow over fresh lands and fresh seas, and nothing remain of them. But she had not seen where the fire burnt brightest. 2 sparks flew up, and after flowing in the air for a few minutes, they fell down into a great river that flows through the heart of the country. Here the sparks had turned into 2 little fishes with golden scales, and one was exactly like the other, that everyone could tell at first glance that they must be twins. Early one morning, the emperor's fishermen went down to the river and caught some fish for their master's breakfast, and cast their nets into the stream. At the last star twinkled out of the sky, they drew them in, and among the multitude of fishes lay the 2 scales of gold, such as no man had ever looked on. They all gathered round and wondered, and after some talk they decided that they would take the little fishes alive as they were, and give them as a present to the emperor. "Do not take us there, for that is whence we came, and yonder lies our destruction," said one of the fishes. "But what are we to do with you?" asked the fisherman. "Go and collect the dew that lies on the leaves, and let us swim in it. Then lay us in the sun, but do not come near us till the sun's rays have dried off all the dew, answered the other fish. The fisherman, not questioning magic fish, did as they told him, and gathered the dew from the leaves and let them swim in it, but then put them to lie in the sun till the dew should be all dried up. The boys grew fast. No, skip the section. And when he came back, what do you think he saw? Why, two boys, two beautiful young princes, with hair as golden as the stars on their foreheads, and each so like the other that at first glance everyone knew them to be twins. The boys grew fast, and every day the youth grew a year's growth, and every night another year's growth. But at dawn, when the stars were fading, they grew 3 years' growth in the twinkling of an eye. I can imagine the growth pains. And they grew in other things beside height, too. Thrice in age, thrice in wisdom, and thrice in knowledge. And when 3 days and 3 nights had passed, they were 12 years in age, 24 in strength, and 36 in wisdom. Now, take us to our father, they said. So the fisherman gave them each a lambskin cap to cover their faces, and completely hid the golden hair and stars on their foreheads, and led them to the court. By the time they arrived there, it was midday, and the fisherman and his charges went up to an official who was standing about. We wish to speak to the emperor, said one of the boys. You must wait until he has finished his dinner, replied the porter. No, while he's eating it, said the second boy, stepping across the threshold. Damn it, I thought I'd pause the ads. I will wait until the ads are over. Okay? Let me go back. Paragraph. I really did think I'd pause the ads. Maybe I hit dismiss instead of pause. Dang it. I hate interrupting a good story. Which would now be a good time to say, if you had Amazon Prime, you wouldn't get ads. If you subscribed, you wouldn't get ads either. No one needs to subscribe to me. It would be nice, but you don't have to. I really did think I'd pause the ads. I wouldn't need more than 5 minutes. But time is as time does, so. But look, there's a cat. One kitty girl. Make it a little brighter so you can see the kitty. Oh, let me adjust it. That sucks. Adjust right. Oh. Look at that stripy cat. She's so cute. Cute stripy cat. I really need a better webcam on that. Because that blanket is blue with white spots. But the ads are almost over, so I'm going to take another drink. I don't know why, but 2 different webcams have got aimed over there. Just don't do jack. Admittedly, one was my old webcam. I could see it kind of burning out a little, but a new one? Okay. Welcome back from the ads. Sorry I did not get them paused. I'm going to backtrack a little so you don't miss any of the story. Now take us to our father, they said. So the fisherman gave them each a lambskin cap which covered their faces and completely hid their golden hair and the stars on their foreheads, and led them to the court. By the time they arrived there, it was midday, and the fisherman and his charges went up to an official who was standing about. "We wish to speak to the emperor," said one of the boys. "You must wait until he's finished his dinner," replied the porter. "No, while he's eating it," said the second boy, stepping across the threshold. The attendants all ran forward to thrust such impudent youngsters outside the palace, but the boys slipped through their fingers like quicksilver and entered the large hall, where the emperor was dining, surrounded by his whole court. "We desire to enter," said one of the princes sharply to his servants who stood near the door. "That is quite impossible," replied the servant. "It is. Let us see," said the second prince, and pushing the servants to the right and left. But the servants were many, and the princes only two. There was the noise of a struggle, which reached the emperor's ears. "What is the matter?" he said angrily. The two princes stopped at the sound of their father's voice. "Two boys wish to force their way in," replied one of the servants, approaching the emperor. "To force their way in? Who dares to use force in my palace? What boys are they?" The emperor said all in one breath. "We know not, O mighty emperor," answered the servants, "but they must surely be akin to yours, for they have the strength of lions, and have scattered the guards at the gate. And they are proud as they are strong, for they will not take their caps off of their heads." The emperor listened, and as he did, he grew red with anger. "Thrust them off," he cried. "Set the dogs on them." "Leave us alone, and we'll go quietly," said the princes as they stepped backwards, weeping silently into the harsh words. They had almost reached the gates when the servant ran up to them. "The emperor commands you to return," he said. "The empress wishes to see you." The princes thought in a moment, and then they went back the way they had come and walked straight up to the emperor with their caps still on their heads. He sat at the top of a long table covered with flowers and filled with guests. Beside him sat the empress, supported by 12 cushions. When the princes entered, one of the cushions fell down, and then there remained only 11. "Take off your caps," said one of the courtiers. "A covered head is a sign among men as an honor. We wish to seem as we are." "Never mind," said the emperor, whose anger had dropped before the silvery tones of the boys' voices. "Stay as you are, but tell me who you are, where you come from, and what do you want?" "We are twins, 2 shoots from one stem, which has been broken and half lies in the ground and half sits at the head of the table. We have traveled a long way, and we have spoken in the rustle of the wind, have whispered in the wood, and have sung in the waters. But now we wish to tell you a story which you know without knowing it, in the speech of men." And a second cushion fell down. "Oh, let them take their silliness home," said the empress. "Oh no, let them go on," said the emperor. "You wish to see them, but I wish to hear them. Go on, boys. Sing me a story." "I'm not singing." The empress was silent, but the princes began to sing the story of their lives. "Once there was an emperor," they began, and a third cushion fell down. When they reached the warlike expedition of the emperor, 3 cushions fell down at once. And when the tale was finished, there were no more cushions under the empress. But the moment that they lifted their caps and showed their golden hair and the golden stars, the eyes of the emperor and all his guests were bent on them, and they could hardly bear the power of so many glances. And there happened in the end what should have happened in the beginning. Atitsa sat next to her husband at the top of the table. The stepmother's daughter became the meanest sewing maid in the palace. The stepmother was tied to a wild horse, and everyone knew, and has never forgotten, that whoever has a mind turned to wickedness is sure to end badly. Okay. And with that, thank you all for coming in. Now, the time has come, and so we see the final curtain. No, I'm not gonna sing. I am, however, going to see if I can find something to rate. Or if anyone has any suggestions, by all means, shout it out. Because I honestly think I have the shout-out feature, well, the stream mode shout-out feature set that anyone can do it. Anyone? Suggestions? Thoughts? Oh! Let's see. I could rate a friend, or I could rate a friend, or I could rate a friend. Well, I've got friends that are streaming right now. I see one doing art, one playing Phasmophobia, one playing Duck Detective. What the hell? Any suggestions? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, well. Again, thank you all for coming out for some wonderful fairy tales. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you. Actually, tomorrow night I will be over on Papa Penguin's, unless something happens, playing Shards from the Edge, doing some Cyberpunk Red stuff. But otherwise, have a good night. And I will find some to read out. Almost like a prayer, nothing more faltering life. He howls at the moon when the light comes near.